What's up, everybody? In this video, I'm going to be showing you a bunch of different automations that have allowed me to automate my Smartlead SOPs. And the main automation is going to be this one right here, which is actually my client onboarding automation. But the key area that we're going to be focusing on is this row over here. In this row, it does a whole bunch of different things which I normally had inside an SOP document. And by the way, what those things might look like is, for example, inside Smartlead, we want to create a folder for the client. And when we go into the folder for the client, it's going to have all of the campaigns. And so making an SOP to do that, right? Normally, people are doing these things manually. Another thing that we can do is we can create these different webhooks. And so if you use Smartlead webhooks, you know that you basically need to add these webhooks for either clients, campaigns, or for users. And if you're using an automation that looks something like this, which is sending notifications for positive replies, you know that you need to replicate this over and over and over and over for every single client. Basically, I've automated that whole process with this, right? So in this first section over here, we are creating one webhook, creating another webhook, and creating another webhook, all of which are going to be for key areas of the business. And so this is what it looks like, right? I've got all of this automated. And by the way, this URL endpoint and this data that I'm using, none of this is accessible on the Smartlead API documentation. This is all stuff that we're doing offhandedly. And if you want to learn how to do that, just check out my YouTube channel. I've got a video explaining how to create automations based on things that are not in the API docs. And so that's what this is doing, right? So one of the SOPs is creating a webhook for different things, and this is what it looks like. It creates the webhook, puts the client ID, does all that for us. Same as this, same as that. Another thing, as I mentioned, we're creating the folder. We're using that same process. And actually, it's probably worth showing you, just in case you have not already seen that. Something I don't have currently inside my SOPs is right. Removing categories, right? Because whenever you create clients inside your Smartlead account, for example, inside my SOPs, inside my automations, one of the things that I do is I add a client to my Smartlead account. And normally you're able to add the name, you're able to add the email, you're able to add the permissions, the logo, and the password. And let me see if the API docs ever have made any changes to that. So add client to system, right? And it's the same data, right? It's the same data that we were just looking at. However, here's what you're not able to add. Something that you're not able to add is remove categories. And I don't want my clients to be able to see every single category. And in fact, I'm actually just going to show you how to do that right now, just to keep it simple for everyone who's not going to watch the other video. So one of the categories, actually, I remove every single category. So inside my client's master inbox, they don't see any of this stuff. The only category they see is closed and sequenced and closed and transferred, as that is what I am delivering over to them. And when I click inspect, when we go over to the network section, I think that did something. Though when I click update, let's see what happens. So update, it changed the preview and the permission reply restricted category. I think this is what I need to do, right? Because we've got these restricted categories over here. 747, that's too complex. Okay, so we've got that. And so now what I need to do, I simply need to copy this URL endpoint over here, navigate back on this section. So this is something that I have to do manually normally, right? But now I get to automate that. And so after the webhooks have been added, I also want to change the category. So let's clone this and let's rename this to say change client categories, right? And we simply paste that URL over that we had just seen over there. So we got the URL by clicking inspect element, navigating over to the network section, fetch HR, and then doing something on the screen and checking for all this. So things have happened since then. And so whenever we navigate over to these things, there's going to be different things that are happening, right? But for now, we want to go back to where we were just at, which is the client save, and we want to view source of the payload. And for this, we're going to copy the payload. And inside the automation over here, we are simply going to, yeah, so change client categories. We're simply going to paste the payload over here. Now, all I need to do, I would basically just be changing all of these things. But let's go ahead and run it as a test to see what it looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh the page. When I refresh the page, remove categories, all of this, it's still here, right? And so now we're going to update it. We're going to refresh the page again. So we've got everything, but remove categories is not back, right? And so now this automation over here, during the client onboarding, after the client has been created at the very first section over there, we're basically going to be running something like this. I'm going to be changing the fields, of course. And would basically, this would basically add the categories. And so let's refresh and let's see if the categories are back. And so the categories are back. And so that's the idea, right? Because these are things that people are doing like manually, right? And these things don't need to be done manually. You don't need to have a long, long SOP document. You could just automate all these things because there's just no point in having an actual human do these things. And so that is one of the things, just added it on the fly here. Another thing is adding client folders. As I mentioned, I've added a few of them manually. Um, Next thing I would be doing is really just like, because I didn't have these folders before, right? This is a brand new SOP. Now they're always going to be here. And I also have like an offboarding process, right? So whenever I'm working with clients, they go through different statuses, right? And so one of the statuses is active, meaning we're actually running campaigns, doing all these different things for them, but eventually they become deactivated. I don't think deactivating them will be removing the folder because I still want to keep all their campaigns, but it's going to be doing other things such as adding tags. One of the tags that I've got is active client. This is a brand new thing, right? Like these are different SOPs that are really like more administrative SOPs as opposed to like hardcore SOPs, but they make a huge difference, right? Because it helps to know that you've got active clients. Because what happens, by the way, when you remove the client, so we've got the client access over here. What happens when we delete it? One, we're going to save $29 per month, but two, every single campaign that we've got is going to get unlinked for that client. And so we need to actually we need to have a way to still be able to filter out all of the different campaigns and the different email accounts, right? Because email accounts still have tags too. But then the problem that arises is that inside the API docs, there's nothing for tags. And that's why it's so important to be able to use the inspect element features, to just basically do whatever you want, right? And so that's another one. Client folders, duplicating subsequences. This is a subsequence thing that I've got going on. So my subsequences, they are going to be in the archive section, I've already done it over here. So archived. And basically we have a Fonto subsequence template, right? And inside this template, there's going to be a subsequence. And this subsequence is a simple subsequence. It's like 7 steps, like any thoughts on the previous email. And it's just not something that we want to like constantly be creating over and over and over. And as you may know, there's no way to actually like duplicate a subsequence. And so like you've got rename, you've got delete. We go back to the parent task. There's no duplicating, right? And there's also no moving of subsequences. And so having an SOP that automatically creates the subsequence for an individual client, that's going to go a very long way. And one of the things that this particular subsequence does, I will show you in a second over here. Let's go ahead and duplicate this manually so that you see, right? So duplicate campaign subsequence, we're going to keep that as well. And once we've duplicated that, we are going to have no leads, right? It's going to prompt us to add leads, but we're not going to do that just yet. And so let's navigate over to the subsequences. As you can see, you're not able to navigate over to the subsequences unless you have a lead inside the master campaign. And so that is one of the automations over here. It's literally just add one lead to the campaign. And by the way, why this is even a thing, this subsequence portion, is because every single client is going to have a subsequence templates section. And all I need to do is simply change the master subsequences section. And then I have another automation that adds all of the subsequences, the updated subsequences, to all of the other campaigns. And so if you find yourself constantly creating campaigns that don't have subsequences, then a solution like this might simplify it for you. Or if you find yourself leveraging the feature that looks something like this, right, which is duplicate subsequence, right? Duplicate subsequence along with the main campaign, but then now you have 20 campaigns and you're unable to reasonably modify every single subsequence within every single campaign, then that's where something like this would come into play, allowing you to have a master subsequence that updates every other subsequence for every single client campaign. Going back to this automation, I've already shown you guys that. Oh, also when we create this campaign, we add it to the campaign folder. And also, this is why this stuff is so important, right? You need to create the folders at the beginning during your onboarding process. Why? Because when I create a brand new campaign, right, and I link it to a client, so add slash update client, when I link this campaign to a client, it's not going to also go to a folder, right? I have to click on the add folder section and then I have to add it to the folder. And so having these automations allows us to create further automations in the future that automatically assign these things, these campaigns over to our different folders. In fact, I'm realizing it might actually be worth it to add a custom field over here called called ClickUp, sorry, Smartlead. Yeah, it's gonna be a website, and I'm gonna call this Smartlead folder, because having the folder over here makes that so easy, because anytime we create a website, we simply just add it to this section. Sorry, anytime we add a campaign, we just add it there. And then the last and final thing that we're doing is we are using custom scripts inside Smartlead, and these custom scripts would be coming inside the client access section over here. Set external script. This script, for example, is going to change the header color, um, change the app colors across everywhere, and do all sorts of different things, right? And this is something that I'm going to be sharing for free in a few days slash weeks. But anyways, this is the SOPs. This is everything that it's doing. This stuff does not require a VA. It just does not.